the same series where I appeared in the same outfit. It's just because I had a little bit of interruption with bandwidth, and I think that there's actually a little bit of a deeper. I don't. So so the if there's one thing more than pretentious, if there's one thing worse than a conspiracy theory, it'd be to complain about a platform while using the platform. If there's one thing worse than complaining about a platform while using a platform, would be to say that I don't mean to say what I'm about to say. So I was gonna say, and also to say I was gonna say is also the worse thing than that. So I was gonna say that I didn't mean to say that I didn't mean to complain about the YouTube platform algorithm, such as to sound like a conspiracy theory. But I appreciate that if you when you're speaking, if you get too close to there's probably some parameters about what the platform is allowed to express, so that it wouldn't be actually subject to legal repercussions that could compromise the platform. So to just for the record, like if someone were to actually ask me, like no one has asked me yet, but what would be your take on YouTube itself and like the liberty, the freedom of speech, or like just the liberty to express yourself on YouTube? Is that YouTube is pretty actually prolific in like the type of statements that it's allowed me to land, and I don't know how it is sophisticated about advertising the videos, or like appreciating engagement and suggesting the video, or making it available. But all I can appreciate that according to the numbers that do appear on the video, some of my content has it's had a pretty wide reach, so to speak, more so than me like talking around an armchair like to family and friends. Is that it's actually is a really actually a public platform that could potentially reach anyone anyhow at any time. And so the type of statements that I make, some of the subject matter and also the range of it, and then also some of the actual sources, it's been very fluid and allowed me to be very broad. But I think that there are a few things that will actually make it'll affect the streaming, and that would be like referencing things that are actually like the things that are referencing people and things that are still that other people are eating from, right? So if you mention a business or sometimes even a person, which is their own form of business, whether famous or not, whether affluent or not, if you reference something too directly, that can impact the stream. But I imagine that could actually impact the ability to stream if the platform were impacted by something that wasn't appropriate to be publicized. It's something like identifiable or like something intimate like that. But then also I've noticed that there's a little bit of latency, or like with the platform on certain subject matters and points. But I didn't mean to. Hi, dude. Is ego writer? Oh shit. Everyone. So that's the thing, right? Online, we're all ego writing something, right? So when you go to on a YouTube, whose ego are you writing? So everybody's writing ego writer, man. Shout out with that. That's a cool name. Hi, what's up, ego writer? That's cool. But I want to keep going a little bit. Is like so I was talking a little bit about language and how like so if you were to use big words in public, like even the word big word, that might be like big word might actually be another misnomer and connotative, because you don't have to use a word with a lot of letters and syllables to you be appreciated as using a big word, right? So if I say this is so jejun, this YouTube platform is so jejun. Everybody is writing everybody's ego. It's so hackneyed and cliche and trite. This jejun thing. What I'm saying is that it's very boring for being repetitive and being presented as being original while also being not original, especially not original for presenting something not original as original is the least original thing that can be done, is the most hackneyed, trite, and cliche, but also it's just simply jejun how boring it is. It's jejun. None of those were actually very long words in terms of the syllables or the letters, but they're actually closer to an actual pure. Now, when I say pure, I don't mean better or worse, but as in original and less appropriating and intermingled, or maybe more so intermingled, such as to be like that's like black, that's like reserved. That's reserve label. So when you use a word that's appreciated as a big word, which it doesn't have to be big, and so that's also connotative and a little bit redundant and oxymoronic to call some words a big word that are neither not that are actually not big words. But it's actually it's so true to the strict etymology that it's actually out of place and it's not appreciated for certain people to use certain words at certain time. Even if you were a statured person, like where you might have business using those in some venues, you may not be appreciated for using it outside of that venue. So you have one form of speech for different classes of people. So according to Tashrik Bey, in a place where you have very stark. Stark means like bold, contrast, relief. Like relief is like a statue. So when you have a very clear, defined statue, prominent, blatant, crude, gross, that means like big, obvious. Stratification of class and privilege and entitlement that all amount to the realities of living and dying and suffering and opportunities. You have like a different language that's appreciated for different people. So you have the language of the masses that would probably be referred to not educated. So that means that people that speak in slang, colloquial expression, idiomatic expression, as it's savvy and not, but also sometimes blundering and not, and also limiting and not. So if you're speaking in colloquial language, that means like part of a region, a very strong regional dialect, so much as to be creative and eloquent and sometimes fun, but also enough to be recognizable and arbitrary or not arbitrary, but antagonistic to another zone, such as to be a limitation in that it's not respected as much. So it's limited by not being respected. Would be to speak colloquial, metaphoric, and slang, even though all language is metaphor, slang, and colloquial exactly in the first place, according to understanding poetry. Even your older etymology, even your older iterations of language like Latin. However, I don't even sound like a professor saying however, but a whole bunch of people dropped out as soon as I dropped that however word. That's an example there too. Is that you check out YouTube for one thing, right? But here goes somebody with a YouTube channel that would either be would deign to, or be unskillful enough to deign to mess around and use a word like however at all, because however that's actually that's reserved for either places that have need for educated talk, right? So when you're saying educated, some fields are, so if you have like words that are specific to a field and they're interchanged in that field, they're manageable in that field, they make that field manageable. And but it's like a cross notes, like a vernacular, a professional vernacular that's part of a discipline, a craft, or a field or profession. That's called nomenclature. But you have different nomenclature for different statuses and classes of people. So you would have like you'd actually have like the colloquial, very distinct slang, colloquial, idiomatic, regional, metaphoric, and sometimes loose and interchangeable language, connotative language would be for actually a slave, for indebted, and or for a fettered class, or a fettered class of people, a slave class, a class that is exploited, is sooner exploited when relying on and within the realities of being of leading with connotation. Then after that, I think it's actually appropriation would be the higher level after that. People who are cool, right? They got a cool job. They don't get the best job. They may be next to, in proximity to, and get money with and around. All people actually get money out the mud. It don't matter how your money, what level you get your money from. All the money comes from the mud, because the mud is the bottom of the totem pole. The mud is the bottom of the food chain, but actually the top of the food chain if you understand the food chain. So the people that got the biggest bank, hand over fist, your bigger corporations, they cease to be corporations and they become actually franchises, and they become landholders, that is landlords. That's actually the most profitable thing, I think. Pound for pound, hands down, is the landlord, is the winningest one. And that's what a big enough franchise of business will, slash corporation, soon to be, then to be franchise, will recognize, is that the bank is actually in being a lord, that is landlord. But where the money comes to the lord from is from the roots, from the grassroots. That's the bottom of the food chain, but so to the top. And the actual best way of making money is nickel and diming. So it's interesting. Like say you're in an area, a venue, like say a shelter, or say like people getting their lives together, like rehab stuff like that, or prison like that. Sometimes these are the people that had the most of money before it went bad. Because if it's not congruent, it can get lopsided, or even if it's congruent, it can also get lopsided, because we're in a lopsided society. So a lot of the people that ever had the most of money, the way they got up to getting a lot of money is they were careful around their nickels and dimes. Then, while having a lot of money or losing a lot of money and still existing at not, if someone has ever had a lot of money, likely they were at that point about nickel and dimes. And or if they lost it, they still have it. They lost it, got it back, and still have it. They lost it, got it back, lost it, still have it, lost it. All that is going to come down to nickels and dimes. So people who really had ever once been about money or good around money and know what that's like and are viable to do that are about nickels and dimes. So if you get to like say prison, right? I'm heaven forbid, if you're in prison, a lot of them have had more money come through their hands. They know what to do with money. They have more sophisticated taste, this and that. But they're actually about that nickel and dime thing. It's like that. But then the higher, so all money comes from the grassroots. But people who are relegated to the grassroots and prevented or limited access from transcending the grassroots, even in a social malleable stratified society like America, would likely be encouraged to or only tolerated for, thereby encouraged to, therefore demanded, therefore guaranteed to use connotative language. Like say you're in a work setting and you appear as one person or not, whether physically or not, but like people can actually get a read on your economic status and your upbringing, and that's probably more what people are reading into when they look at you, not like what you look like now, but what you come from and what you go home to and go home to for having come from is what is to be appreciated by you. But if you use connotative language, slang, you're more connotation, you will be cooperated with better, respected better, viable better, succeed better. Therefore, that's what's viable at that level. Then next to that, part of that, but beyond that and different than that, would be appropriated language. So a lot of times, people that they may be, if you listen, so people that are would call low class, poverty class, destitute, out not having a home, stuff like that. People that would be relegated to that or come from that proximity to that would be having connotation. Then beyond that, next to that, a part of that, not different than that, but somehow appreciated as above that would be appropriated language that a lot of people that are from the struggle or not far away from it, normal people or people not employed in not using language in some specific venue that demands a more sophisticated nomenclature would only be tolerated for using appropriated language and sounding like using appropriated language. So if you're having cool things in your life, right? You're not appreciated as being working class. You wouldn't be invited if you were appreciated as working class. You're next to working class. You're next to beginning to beyond working class, ostensibly, so to speak. You will be tolerated and enjoyed better by using appropriate language, that is language that sounds like working class, like it has been lifted from working class, but not actually working class or understanding yourself as working class, poverty class, or you also want to be tolerated. So if you were like say you were next to, adjacent to, or somewhat beyond and actually viable and profitable, enjoyable for being next to, but also seeming somewhat beyond the working class, the gutter, you'd be saying stuff oh yeah, you might say stuff I'm trying to think of something that's clearly appropriate, like 24/7, man. Because yeah, man. So we're so if I'm working class, or I seem like I came from working class, I'm not just like actually outstanding and well off, wealthy, and to be appreciated as believable as that. If I were to say, man, we go there all the time. We go there a lot. Now I'm gonna sound like like I grew up in the old middle class, and I'm still viable as someone that came from the middle class, or just like a kind of like a middle class pushover, stuff like that. But if I say like, man, we were balling out, man. Oh man, we be up there, or not? No, to say we be, that's a little bit too eloquent. That actually sounds like working class and like from the real experience. But I would say, man, we're balling, man. And then we're gonna, we're there 24/7, man. We're always at that spot 24/7, man. Can't get enough of it, because it's all good, man. That's a little bit too eloquent to say all it's all good, but yeah, because you know how it is, man. Always got to get it out the mud, man. You know how it is, man. Because oh yeah, man. And check this out, man. I got a call from my girlfriend, man. The broad is trifling. She's trifling. I'm actually being appropriating like that. I'm appropriating like what it would sound like to be eloquent, like from the struggle like that at a different stratification class. But I'm actually more appropriate for being appropriating like that, to sound appropriating, but to sound as understanding myself as appropriating or comfortable appropriating and not being aware that I'm appropriating. That's one thing. Then beyond that would be like actually professional, where you have just a little bit more of sophistication and closer to adherence to etymology. Then beyond that would be actual higher class. So at the blue collar level, you can have any degree of affluence, and so when you sound like you're appropriating language, that could be like sound like a management class, and you're believable as petty bourgeoisie. Not to be derogatory with petty, but just to say near, adjacent to, beginning to early bourgeoisie, lower bourgeoisie, that is management class. Some form of capital holding, some form of assets, even if that's your title and name and appearance, some form of asset that will distinguish you as being purely subject. That's one thing like that, the appropriated language. Then you have the professional, semi-professional, educated, semi-educated. That would be more adherent to etymology when and where it's appropriate. You'd be tolerated only so much as it's appropriate, where it's appropriate, how it's appropriate. But then you would be very celebrated that you could get on to use it as is appropriate and understand how to use it where appropriate. Then you might get to like a doctor. If a doctor was like, "What up, man? Oh man." So you had, I'm sorry. If a doctor were to sound too savvy, like a colloquial expression, that may not be believable or tolerated or enjoyable. If they were to sound appropriating, that could barely be tolerated or enjoyable and appropriate, depending on how young the doctor were. The more that they would seem statured and developed in age and experience, you would like in your doctor, as your doctor is selling himself to you, just a little bit more of sophistication, for lack of a better word, and adheres to etymology, for lack of a better word. Then if someone's writing a textbook, or they're being technical or something like that, or they're having access to like different tiers of social stratification and activities that we wouldn't know about as layman people, then that's where that other stuff is viable for. So you would have Latin at all levels of that. Latin is within all that, but it's more and more strict and adherent to the order iteration as you go up the stratification, and it's more effective, and its purpose is to serve the stratification and be preserved. So actually, Latin is actually, when you want to go to college, what you want to go to college for is to learn the Latin way to say a lot of different things, because that Latin, it to sound bespoke, is to sound actually more so of the order iteration of language, closer to the original use of it and understanding of it, where and how it's appropriate, where and who and where how it's appropriate with. So the language that was actually preserved parallel to the experiences of the masses, so to speak. So when the people of the working class are working, are conceding maybe finance to the institutions in the form of their children's tuition, and or working for the tuition, the institutions themselves as a lower ranking employed staff, and or anywhere that people from that institution would frequent, right? So you have like a lot of different places will pop up next to a college or university that impact the experience of going to school there. Those places next to and adjacent, they'd be appreciated as using more so of vernacular and things like that, and that's would be suitable there. So I'm just saying, but then while they're doing that, and what they're serving is actually the venues where the real actual Latin, the etymology is exactly preserved and exactly employed exactly as it's intended, as to be a higher tier of enjoyment and deprived from the masses. So sometimes like you don't appreciate like, so America is appreciated as America is a very racially conscious, stratified, segregated society to present, right? But most people who are have a racial mind, which I think a lot of us do as a function of our upbringing, is that you didn't grow up seeing a lot of things firsthand that were arbitrarily blatant racist atrocities, likely, a lot, likely. But you actually have a racial mind. How is that? Is because the actual the school venues, the way that they function on a deeper level and what they are on a deeper level, is a method of preserving and also stratifying opportunities for learning by having already learned. That is to get closer and closer to a point where the schools themselves will begin to exactly set it's school. You're taught segregation in school by the school itself, by the way it functions. You're not taught anymore that these people are better than that people necessarily. You're taught that some students are better than other students, and those two students likely what actually would make you a better student. You have to write papers well, you have to read well. That is, you have to be better and better with Latin, whether it's presented as Latin. To be a good student means to be good with languages, plain and simple. My mother actually was out, my mother's passion in life was for languages in and out of school. She was a brilliant student. She's part of the yearbook she worked on the yearbook at her parochial school that she went to school for. That was a well-to-do school for her time, and she was trained by nuns, but she had some enlightening nuns that had her think twice about the system and transcend her own upbringing. But she was actually inspired by languages, and it's interesting that a lot of times women, females, are very strong students in school all the way through at all levels of education, both students and as proctors, teachers. Women are simply excellent in schools. Also, women are excellent with language. Women are generally excellent with language. Like according to Tony Gaskins, if you appreciate the what would seem like the development of a child at different ages, based on the language and the engagement of attention that is attendant of the language, sometimes a female specimen, a female child, student, pupil, adolescent, teenager, young adult, a woman, matron, mother, wizened, person. Women are simply outstanding with language, and so it's. I think that when you go to school, if you do it well in any subject, it's exactly because of language. Even mathematics is yet a language and a function of language. Or if you get good at science, it's because you learn what the terms are and are about. But so too, school also segregates the students within the school itself, because you have this club over here, you have this great student over here, you have this popular one over here. Likely, what would make you actually acceptable and popular or not in school or not, it probably has more to do with how you talk, how you come across verbally, if anything, that you could sound. Because like if you think about the cool kids in school, so in school you had some of the exact actual stratification in schools. You could say that. What is it? So at the lunch table, right? So you go to the lunchrooms, right, in schools, right? They would seem segregated, right? The lunch tables are segregated, but how and why would they be segregated? The reason that the lunch tables are segregated in school is not because of complexion in itself or socioeconomic background in itself, because you can have two siblings that are appreciated and have different experiences of school itself. The actual difference in segregation in the lunchroom in school, I think it's actually the language, is that how do you talk? How do you interface for sounding the way that you sound, that you talk, that you are accustomed to, and that you're also further trained to talk by your salient peer group, which is a lot of your identity and sense of self in high school and beyond, and in school theretofore, is actually the way you talk, who you get along with, but who you talk more like for getting along with. So in school, if I bet you if you were to go table for table, section for section, subset for subset, subculture for subculture, popularity for popularity, nerd for nerd, they actually exactly talk very similar, because and then further share experience, and then further share viewpoints by sharing experience by talking similar, or being tolerated similar for talking similar. So the more success in school means that you actually talk better. The reason that you would that you have favors in school or success in school, likely, so broadly speaking, more is actually how you talk. Then too, but what about the jocks? If the jocks are if you're a jock in school, if you're successful, if you're a starter on the team, you're not only a starter because of how many shots you put up, how athletic you are, how formidable, how gifted you are. That's not only how you are. You're also a jock for also being a starter, for also being the cool one on the team, because there's even stratification on the very teams themselves. It's actually the way that you talk and that you socialize. It's part of how you succeed, even within sports. That you would get the better looks for practice, because you actually get different opportunities in practice. Everyone doesn't actually get to try out for the team. On the team, everybody doesn't get to try out for quarterback. If you had to guess, right, you got this many kids, right? They all want to play football, but one of them is actually the quarterback. They have enough knowledge to do that, but also enough attempts to practice to have the knowledge and the chops to do that. Who might that be? Might that also likely be the actual parents, the child of the coach? Not only necessarily, but also too likely, also likely. The actual, so there's a little bit of nepotism and actually favoritism and bias within the opportunities within sports teams, but that's also not independent of the language too. Because I played sports from a young age. I played football from a young age in Southwest, and some of the graces and the seasoning that I got from that, I parlayed it into basketball, into like endurance with basketball. But most of my success in basketball was self-taught, because I didn't get along with the kids on the football team, and then later in basketball, I got my chops by myself. Then on the teams, I didn't always get along, but I also talk different, because my father would have been from another country. So I grew up under a man's home who was from a culturally distinct culture, and then also his mannerisms and speech and subjects that he would talk about would be very unique for him as a person. Him being in a foreign country, but then also him being a highly erudite and educated, and in the process of becoming further erudite, is that I would have different exposure to language, not for better or worse, but it would give me my unique experience as a function of the language, and I want to point that out. But so that your actual the most defining metric of your experience in school, and the what your experiences in school are experiences of talking different and getting to talk different for being around people, and getting to be around people for talking and talking different and talking similar. And so when you get to, and then if you get to actually matriculate to college, which a lot of school is a siphoning, and it's actually a culling of actual the brilliant talent, and the next generation, they're actually culled by their very education, and sometimes limited and inculcated with false notions and different forms of fiat in the terms of education and notions, but also limiting self-belief, such that when students actually make it to some of the higher opportunities and venues, one is that to accost and approach some of the opportunities that are viable for students in school, like extracurricular activities and what that will segue to, or just different recruiters that would come to a campus, like maybe after hours or even during school hours. That a student would engage those opportunities has to do with their confidence, and that has to do with experiences that they're already having based on language and being segregated or celebrated based on their speech mannerism. But I think that, like, if you think about the stereotypical jock, right? Like the jock that everybody loves to hate the jocks, right? They can't stand the jocks, but they also can't get enough of the jocks because everyone else can't get enough of the jocks, right? The jocks, they use that kind of appropriated language where, if you like, say you might have someone on this. I didn't know Allen. I don't know who Allen Iverson was in high school, but I bet Allen Iverson, he impacted the NBA because he was the first one that crossed up Jordan. He's the first one that made Jordan's ankle sore. I'll be that egregious to stick my tongue in my foot in my mouth. I don't got Jordans on right now, but Jordans are still fly. I seen the coldest pair of Jordans I've ever seen in my life today. There's some Jordan sixes, and they were red, white, gray, and like caramel, like light caramel. Like, and they also were worn in. I think that in Japan they have a word for that called sabi and wabi. Sabi and wabi means like poverty and loneliness. The actual aesthetic taste part excellence, according to Japanese. Like Japanese gave us the haiku, which is some of the greatest economy around words. Words are powerful whether you like it or not, them or not. Words are very powerful, but if you actually have economy of words, that's very strong. So haiku is some of is art part excellence, poetry part excellence, literacy part excellence, but it's also part of Japanese taste and aesthetics and motifs and modes and trends. And part of that is this idea of sabi and wabi. It's a combination of poverty and loneliness and usedness. So something that's used and beat up is actually more beautiful. And an example of that is actually a beautiful pair of Jordans worn by someone still living a street lifestyle, not necessarily breaking the law or doing anything flamboyant or impressive, but just actually really living that real shit. And they got some Jordans that have been through real shit on their feet, but they're still fly ass Jordans and shit. And that's actually taste part excellence. That little beat down, worn a little bit, but still flyer than shit, and flyer for being worn and being broken in, and probably being someone's only pair of shoes that they're really about is like some Jordans like that. But to stick my foot in my mouth, Jordan, the first time he got his ankle sore was by Allen Iverson, and Allen Iverson, he upset the league by, you would think that, how did Allen Iverson make such a wave? Was it by crossing up Jordan, no less, and then landing a three? Because not only did he cross him, but he also landed the three, to give the man his credit. Was it because he dressed different at games where Jordan was more so wearing suits and was all about suits, and Iverson was all about not wearing suits? I'm not saying that's what Iverson only did right or what he was all about. Iverson was a nonconformist. He was an artist part. Jordan was the greatest of artists, or a great artist. I look at Jordan more as an artist and an athlete in itself. Jordan was simply a brilliant artist and an athlete too, and a team player winner too, but also an artist. What? How do you know you have an artist? Artists are powerful. How are they powerful? They're influential. People want to be like them. People want to be a lot like artists, like Jordan. I want to be like Mike. I want to be influential. I want to be an artist. But the exception proved the rule. So Allen Iverson was a non-conformist. It was very artistic what he did to Michael Jordan's ankles. What Allen Iverson artistically did to Jordan's very artistic ankles was very artistically and also non-conformist, because it actually pushed the boundary in the cusp of what is carrying and not. So part of the beauty of the crossover is not only its effect, but how close it skirts the line to actually being a carry. So he's damn near cheating. He's cheating by damn near cheating. You expected someone to play by Jordan expected someone to play by the rules. He may have expected someone to also cheat, but he didn't expect someone to damn near cheat. Allen Iverson damn near cheated. It was very artistic how he damn near cheated. That is, he improvised. That is, he was artistic, creative, nonconformist. Such too was his speech. So when he was at that conference and they said, "Hey man, something about practice," and Iverson's like, "Practice? We're talking about practice." He's not saying that he didn't practice. He didn't get to have the crossover to do what he did. He didn't get to do that kind of nice stuff, and he didn't get to be diabolical with the man Jordan's very ankles without having been through medical school by not practicing. What he's saying is that you're running back for me, repeating to me practice as though I don't know what practice is, as though I'm not already in the NBA and I'm not already doing things with people's ankles like this, as sadistic about this and having problem with people's ankles like this, and having my own shoe for having a problem with people's ankles like this, very sadistic thing like this, with the question and the answer. Before that had been the answer, I think there's the question. How may someone be this diabolical? That's the question. How is anybody this diabolical? That's the question. Allen Iverson. it's because of that artistic nonconformance like that, and it probably feel good. It would be maybe the answer, but what was more egregious to tastemakers and the general public is that Allen Iverson's statement, practice. We're talking about practice. People didn't talk like that at press conferences in the NBA like that. No, sir. People didn't say that to the man. No, sir. People would be very respectful, sir, likely, or they just wouldn't be that much of themselves. It's not that he was disrespectful, but he was being himself. So likely when Allen Iverson was in school, it's interesting. He had difficulty matriculating to the MB to Georgetown University because he had already some smoke on his jacket. I think he had gotten into contention at a bowling alley, and it wasn't clear the circumstances that happened there. But I bet you whoever he would have been hanging out with, who would have been his friends they would have been the kind of persons that could get in trouble. Not that they would any more so than any other child that age, because you have to appreciate how young people are and the type of decisions they make. But likely they would have been talking very different because they weren't the one to be conforming. So they would have had to be friends because they're cut like each other, but they're also non-conforming and they likely talk like that. So that's likely who they were in school. I bet that Allen Iverson was a renegade in school, even though he was popular and he could succeed with the jock, but he didn't actually act like a jock, even though he was like a super jock. Everybody was on his job in the NBA, including me as a kid. Like when I was trying to get my hands on some questions, I only could get the black pair when I was young because the actual that white color with just a little bit of baby purple color on that, the ones I wanted, the one I asked Santa for, I didn't get it like that. I got the other. If I actually would have got them real Iversons that I wanted, that I asked Santa Claus for, but I actually was a good boy all year long, like practicing a lot and like working up the chops while being inspired by Iverson, my life would have maybe been different if I actually got to rock. Man, I really actually wish I could have stunted those. Man, damn it, if I could have stunted those baby purple Iversons, the original Iversons, just like the commercial at school, but also seen myself practice at home wearing that shit, I might have actually made it to the league. I think I might have actually made it to the league if I would have got those questions on my hands like I had asked, but they weren't available in my size. So I got the black questions, and they were cool. They were still questions, but they were a little bit just kind of a little bit ugly compared to the real ones, and they felt like that wearing them. But and I think they look like that. But Iverson, what was the most significant thing about him was his way of speech, but that was not that of a jock. That a jock is actually very entitled. Like jocks in school are entitled. Like yeah, I have my cake and I eat it too, and I know it too, and I like it too, and you like it for me too. I think too, until you do too, as a jock, but they also speak in that appropriated way, like, "Hey, yeah, man, so it's gonna be lit up there." Like they're talking like appropriate. They're not actually talking like they're from the street. And the ones that are from the street are down with the you down with OPP? Yeah, you know me. You down with appropriated language? Yeah, you know me. So everyone's down with the appropriate stuff, even the people who are being appropriated. If you've been around that stuff, but that's just like I'm just saying that that's a significant way of talking. And those people that have been appropriating language like that in high school, they would have actually sounded cool and shit. The people that actually talk like that's how they talk at home. They sound cool and shit. But the ones that sound like they're appropriating, they sound cooler than shit because the coolest shit is actually entitlement. This life, this society, the schools are about entitlement. But then they would have been having the confidence to get onto those opportunities, and that would impact their life. But I'm saying that people actually learn segregation in school because they learn different ways to talk in school and to treat people differently based on how they're accepted, differently based on how they talk and how they think, which is how they talk differently in school. So then once they get into like beyond once you actually get to the further ranks of even elementary, but then to middle school, high school, uh, uh, higher education, and professional life and beyond, there's a lot of segregation that has already been effective, and real life outcomes have been precluded or afforded already that are significant, and some of them are irredeemable, unchangeable, unfalsifiable, and there's no looking back once some of those divergences have taken place in that stratification. But so actually, school itself teaches segregation because it teaches different ways of talk. It creates a circumstance for people to talk differently, then for people to succeed differently, and then learn to talk differently for succeeding different and getting access to different information, which all match to different ways of talking. And then when people are professional with and without degrees, with and without that footing, they'll only be tolerable so long as they would talk. And it's not only that you would talk like you're from this place or that place, but also that you would talk in a venue like you're from this place or that place, or that not from that place or this place, and know that you're not from this place or that place, but that it's appropriate for this place or that place. Is like how a lot of things break down, I think. But I actually have like way more ideas like that I wanted to come with, and actually almost a completely different topic that I want to start with. But something just told me to dial this, rein this one in, and save one for another day. Save some more for a rainy day. Save one for a rainy day. So I got another one in the chamber for a rainy day, even though it looks like it's about to rain, even though it's winter. But I hope someone could enjoy this and gain something from this, and I'll keep coming with that fire. I'm on fire. Peace out.